Oikein hyvää huomenta täältä Urban 3 studiosta Marjan 01. On jälleen aika uuden Urbanit visionäärit tietoiskun. And this time actually we're going to be doing it in English with Mark Sorsa-Leslie from Auttaa.ai. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
So I'm going to be bouncing around between English and Finnish here in the beginning. Ja jatketaan tästä kotimaisella alkuun vähän kirahuvin kuulumisia, jos saadaan diat sieltä näkyviin. Hyvä. Eli vähän tapahtumakalenteriasiaa, varastohankkeen kick-off, rakennusalan vastuullisuusdata käyttöön Peppolla hankintasanomien avulla 3.3.9.10 täällä Urban 3 ja verkossa sieltä QR-koodin kautta tai Kirahubin tapahtumakalenterista kirahub.org kautta tapahtumat pääsee ilmoittautumaan ja lukemaan lisää koko ohjelmasta. Lämpimästi tervetuloa sinnekin. Sitten 2 päivää myöhemmin 5.3. Kira-älyä työkalun lanseeraus myöskin täällä Urban 3. Tämäkin 9.10, jos oikein muistan. QR-koodin kautta pääsee lukemaan lisätiedot ja ilmoittautumaan, mutta mikäli tekoälyasiat ja oman organisaation tekoälyosaaminen kiinnostaa, niin kannattaa tulla kuulolle. Mennään sitten seuraavaan. Sitten vielä Kira-ilmasto-ohjelman loppuseminaari, eli 22. päivä huhtikuuta 11.4. Katanokalaiturin 4. oli Sokos Hotel 4. Koko hankkeen ohjelman lopputerveiset. Katsotaan, mitä tässä viime vuosien aikana on saatu aikaa ja miltä tulevaisuus näyttää hankkeiden osalta. Lämpimästi tervetuloa tuosta myös QR-koodin kautta ilmoittautumaan. Sinne on paikan päälle rajallinen määrä paikkoja, eli kannattaa kipin kapin käydä ilmoittautumassa, mikäli paikan päälle mielii. Mennään sitten seuraavaan. All right, and then we'll switch back to English. So, Mark, welcome. First, we can go over with some of your slides about what we're going to be talking about today. So,
great.
Without further ado.
So we were lucky enough to be actually invited to be part of the AI Accelerator last year, spring. And out of that, we built a proof of concept that was around using real-time data and AI together. And we've taken that forward now from a concept where we kind of proved that it would actually work into a product. So what we're actually launching at the moment, Auttaa.ai, is what we're calling the autonomous intelligence layer. It's the ability to take data that's coming from buildings in whatever form and to use that with AI to kind of get a deeper understanding of what's going on. So we spin forward. And the challenge that we actually identified was that real estate actually has this kind of implementation gap. So it's not that we don't know what to do. We know what we should be doing, but it's moving from the knowing to the doing that's been the big challenge. So, I'm a chartered surveyor by training. I've spent the whole of my life, working life at least, on this kind of corner between real estate and data and building data systems. And I've seen for the whole of that period that actually the real estate industry is not that great at using the data it's producing. And today with smart buildings, we're producing more and more of it than we ever were. But this implementation gap, this idea that we've got this problem, it's around not being able to use the data because it's siloed, right. and legacy systems make it difficult to use. It's also because what follows from that is that actually beginning to use it requires skills, requires time, requires money. And often many of these projects actually work well in 1 or 2 buildings, but can't scale to a portfolio level. And then we just have this kind of overall talent problem within the industry, that there are just not enough people with the depth of data skills needed to handle the big data that buildings are now producing. And we're also seeing at the other end of the industry, the knowledge retiring out of the industry, and we're losing that kind of know-how within the industry as well. So we have this kind of like talent chasm as we see it. So that's what we are kind of talking about as the implementation gap.
Right.
And for us, launching the service at the moment, we're targeting facilities management companies in particular, who are struggling to attract the right kind of talent that they need. FM companies are actually finding it difficult to recruit those people. And as mentioned, this kind of the pain points that they're experiencing are around the kind of the implementation of systems, the manual tagging process taking weeks and months, and ending up being projects that actually fail to scale past a single building. And ultimately what they fall back on is the kind of the boots on the ground model, where they just throw people at the problem to try and solve it. And what that ends up in is the kind of what we see in facilities management and property management, which is it's actually quite a low margin business, and it's because it's very labor intensive. And yeah, and so what we've actually done is we've built this solution. That's it. That takes data that's coming from any building, ingests it automatically. So we're using bespoke AI tools that we've created to actually learn about the data that's coming in, and to convert it from raw data to telemetry that an AI system can use, and then apply that data to a discovery process where we understand the causes and the actions that need to be taken. And that's actually what the Auttaa system actually is.
Good.
So yeah.
Perfect. All right, good. We can skip to the end of the slides. Thank you. Great. Before we dive deeper into Auttaa, we usually ask some kind of personal background questions, because these interviews are also about the person, not just the product. So the first one is I'd kind of like to ask you about your career path. You kind of touched on this right there. You have a Scottish accent. How have you ended up here in Helsinki, Finland? Where do you start off, and how you ended up here?
So yeah, love is always the route that takes. It's love or Nokia was the old story, wasn't it? So for me, it was love, and I met my wife here in Helsinki in 1998, and we lived in Scotland for a period, and then here in Helsinki, and then back to Scotland, and now we're back in Helsinki for the second tour. I trained, as I mentioned, as a chartered surveyor, so I've kind of worked in property development, leasing, acquisitions, disposals, and also kind of management consultancy in the real estate world. But I've always kind of had this kind of interest in data and using data, and that kind of stems from the very first workplace that I worked in. The very first PC arrived back in 1989. It was quite a long time ago, and the boss at the time said, "Anyone know how to use a computer?" I said, "I had a Commodore 64. That's good enough. If you could set that up and then teach us all how it works." And that's really where my kind of career with data kicked off.
Good. And what keeps you passionate? What makes you get up out of bed every morning and go to work?
For me, I love the fact that we've got an industry that does real tangible things. Buildings are real things. They are, the fabric of our lives is kind of connected with buildings. And I've always just been passionate about actually finding and using data to kind of make better decisions in real estate, and that's what I do every single day.
Good. Here at Kirahub, our whole kind of ethos is advancing sustainable digitalization in the built environment. What do those words, digitalization of the built environment, mean exactly to you?
I think it's embodying the operations and the construction and the operations of buildings in data. We've been doing that for years, but as I mentioned earlier, I think not successfully as an industry. We tend to want to apply standards and fail, because buildings are islands. They're unique by their nature, and standardization is a real challenge. But I think that kind of digitalization means using the data that buildings are producing, and smart buildings are producing petabytes of data every year now.
Yeah. Okay, let's dive deeper into Auttaa then. So just to recap, based on your introduction, in one sentence, what is Auttaa.ai, and then what problem did you see in real estate that made you say this has to exist, or I can't believe no one's done this before?
So yeah, we call it the autonomous intelligence layer. It's a new layer that is using the data that is being produced by buildings to produce standardized outputs. So we don't care what the inputs are, but we want to create standardized outputs, causal actions and tailored, kind of basically tailored responses.
Yep.
The problem that needed to be tackled was actually from 2016 through to recently, I'd been involved in IoT, an IoT startup where we were producing huge amounts of data that we were just not using, and then also involved in smart building projects where you can kind of see the rest of the systems also not actually using the data that they're
Right.
producing. So I thought that the problem that we need to try and establish is that clearly there's an opportunity with AI. Can AI use this data? And the thesis was, can we use streaming data that's
Right.
coming from a building with AI? Because that they're not kind of like natural bedfellows, those two things.
Yeah. So you've had a different company called Enviable. Why launch Auttaa right now, separate from Enviable, and what changed from idea to defined service?
Enviable was set up really as a consulting business. So
Right.
it was there to kind of help me serve customers and provide service to customers. Auttaa is a technology business, and it became clear that when we could prove that actually this could be productized, it
Right.
deserved to be spun off into a separate technology business. Of course, we want to attract customers, but we also want to attract investors, and having a separate vehicle is actually the best way to do that.
Right. And what does launch ready with Auttaa.ai mean this week? Is it the product is ready, deployments, you have partnerships, or is it just a brand that's ready?
It's the product is ready, so it's built. So we've got this kind of discovery engine built. We have the ingestion process built. We have the whole kind of messaging, persona-based messaging. That's all ready to go. So we're at the point now where we're ready to start bringing buildings onto the platform.
Right.
So launch genuinely means we're ready to go.
Good. You mentioned real estate being stuck in an implementation gap. What, in kind of layman's terms, what is that gap right now?
The gap is kind of like a threefold problem. So we're not using the data that we are producing.
Right.
It's kind of like number one. Number two is that to begin to use that data at the moment, we're actually finding that it is costly and expensive and
Right.
bespoke project, essentially. And the third part is that we're kind of lacking the skills in the industry, both data skills, but also losing that kind of talent that is going out and retiring from the industry.
Right. And so in your experience, where do projects right now that are kind of stuck in this implementation gap, where do they kind of die? Is it procurement, data tagging, integration, or change management? Or
I think it's a bit of all of them.
Right.
So, we get stuck in this kind of trying to standardize the inputs. So that becomes a huge project in its own right. I've watched clients spend months and in some cases years trying to standardize the way that they're producing data from their buildings. And if you can do it in one or two buildings, that's great. But if you have a portfolio of 200 buildings and it's costing you 20 to 50,000 euros in 3 to 6 months every time you try and use the data in that building, you're not going to get through that portfolio.
So you were earlier this week when we were talking, you mentioned this kind of facilities manager director story, and you talked about the triple squeeze forces that are kind of pushing teams into more of a firefighting mode than a kind of a, seeing problems come before they happen mode. So what are these triple squeeze sort of forces that are pushing teams?
It's the firefighting mode is really coming from the fact that those directors are working in, trying to build profitable contracts. So they're serving customers and trying to do that with profitable contracts. But we have this kind of very labor-intensive industry where we throw people at the problem rather than trying to find the pure digital solutions to it. So this kind of problem of not being able to work with the data, not being able to actually get out of that implementation gap, not being able to recruit people in, it's kind of creating this pressure where on-site teams are constantly, instead of kind of dealing with the strategic issues, they are constantly dealing with emergent issues that pop up, that surprise them and take their focus away from dealing with the longer term issues like sustainability, like reducing energy waste, like making sure that occupant comfort and occupant productivity is in a good level.
Yep. So Auttaa claims portfolio intelligence in 48 hours. So walk us through those first 48 hours when kind of the system is implemented into a new building. What happens from that kind of initial connection to the first discoveries? What does that 48 hours look like?
So what we do first is that we connect up a feed that might be an MQTT feed, or it might be an API, a read-only API from the building. We ingest the first data from the building, and we have an ingestion agent that actually looks and understands the data. It basically does that by comparing it with a fingerprint or a signature that it already has. And where it doesn't have a transformation script, it will automatically build its own. It will reason and build its own transformation script. Once we've got the data into the database, that's probably going to happen within a few hours of us actually getting the data in the database. We then start this discovery engine and this discovery process. And what that's doing is reading in and trying to kind of look at the patterns that we can see in the building, looking for anomalies and looking for the non-obvious things that are going on in the building. So it doesn't take very long for us to kind of understand, where things are not working correctly in the infrastructure. But what we aim to do is at the end of 48 hours is to produce an output for the customer that says that we actually have read in your data, we've run a discovery process, and actually what we found are, here are the kind of interesting things, the low-hanging fruit that we think you could address immediately. And then the process continues because it's streaming data. So we're continually streaming and we're continually learning.
So you kind of described this zero-knowledge ingestion and decoding what you call dark data without months of manual tagging, without kind of revealing corporate secrets or anything. Where's the magic? Where does the magic exactly happen? Is it kind of a pattern or signature library, AI agents, both? Where does the kind of, the way you describe it, it seems so fluent and kind of, you just implement the solution and then pretty much with a snap of a finger, it all works. What's the magical secret ingredient?
I think the magic is we're not trying to standardize. That's the magic. So I think if you start from the premise that you want to standardize the outputs, not the inputs, it actually makes your life much easier. But also every asset that we read in, every building that we bring on board, it creates this kind of like data signatures. Assets are fairly, if it's an HVAC asset, if it's a fan coil unit or an air source heat pump, they have a particular output, and it doesn't really matter if you go from manufacturer to manufacturer. They all basically have, even though they call them different things, they basically have the same output. So this kind of zero knowledge ingestion is that we've seen some of this data before. If we can recognize it immediately, it gets converted to telemetry and it goes into the telemetry database. If it doesn't, then we have an agent that applies that kind of reasoning to say, okay, I know that this is a fan coil unit. I know the data points I'm looking for. which points do I have, what matches up with what I'm expecting, and then let me build a script so that I can bring that data in, run a process. And the kind of crucial thing is that the system doesn't open the taps and let the data into the telemetry database until it's confident it has created a script that works.
Right. So once the data is ingested, what type of issues does Auttaa surface best in buildings? Is it energy waste, comfort complaints, equipment faults, scheduling? Where does the kind of value usually appear first for the building users?
I think the finding those kind of anomalies that are not kind of breaking rules actually is probably the kind of the part that we can do really well. So most building management systems, there's been a lot of time and effort built into creating those rule sets, creating those alarms and alerts. What we're doing is we're looking at kind of unusual behavior. Like, for example, I got a digest this morning that came from one of the buildings saying that the fans were running on these 3 particular fan coil units, but none of the heating or cooling valves were open. So why are the fans running? There's no purpose to that. That wouldn't be breaking a rule necessarily if you were looking at it from a BMS perspective, but it gets surfaced in our system because we've said to the AI, if you see anything that looks like it's wasting energy, bring it to our attention. So it's kind of like it's a combination of faults where we think something is just not working correctly, energy waste that we think we've identified, and then issues that might lead to tenant complaints.
You mentioned building this sort of influence graph that helps get to the root cause of issues. So in practice, let's say you're an engineer working on a big building site, multiple buildings. How does this in practice kind of change an engineer's day?
The influence graph is really interesting. It's being built every time we run a discovery process. The influence graph is being added to, and so that is happening organically.
Right.
What that allows us to do is to actually trace the causality from a point that we might have upstream to the assets that are connected to it. So you might take a process that could take an engineer 1 or 2 hours to actually delve into the data, find that kind of upstream problem. The influence graph allows us to hop through the graph directly to the piece of equipment that might actually be causing the failure. And because we're collecting that organically, again, we don't need to actually understand the inner workings of the building, because every time we run the process, we're learning a little bit more about how the building runs. And that's kind of vital to this, getting to this kind of like rapid root cause analysis. For an engineer, the most important thing is that we free up their time. They're not data janitors. They are people who are receiving qualified outputs that say, we think this is the problem. The hypothesis is that it's caused by this piece of equipment. Here's the recommendation.
So for engineers, it means you can take a longer lunch break and smoke another cigarette. No need to be running around putting out fires every minute.
They can cover more buildings. Let's fit it that way. For their bosses, they can cover.
Depends on the engineer how. Exactly. So let's talk about the business side for a minute. What is kind of your go-to-market strategy now? Who are the buyers? Is it FM companies, engineering firms, asset owners, all of the above? Where's kind of your customer base?
We're targeting working with the large FM consultancies. They have existing customer relationships. They have large portfolios under management, and they have that kind of implementation gap problem, where they may have been testing and trialing AI tools, but are looking for a kind of scalable solution that can be applied across a portfolio. Clearly, they're serving the owners and asset managers underneath, and so over time, we of course hope that the work that we do together with the FM consultancies actually leads to tangible, benefits for their customers as well.
And what is your sort of fee structure? Is it a one-time fee that these companies pay, or is it a monthly subscription-based model? How do you how do you charge the companies for the service?
It's two parts. There's a platform fee for every building that you bring onto the system, and then there's what we call the usage fee. So for every monitored asset, there's a small charge per month for the monitored assets. Essentially, what we're trying to make sure that we cover is that inference and the use of the AI tools, it costs money, and that we have to kind of allow this cost base to scale according to the actual complexity of the building that we're managing.
Right. And what do you think is going to be the sort of North Star metric that the facility management companies or leaders are going to kind of obsess over when the service is implemented?
I think that their North Star is going to be, can we help them improve their profit margins?
Right.
So can we help them to scale their business without adding labor?
Right.
Can we help them to create new income sources from intelligence services that they haven't been able to offer before?
Right.
So I think that this kind of margin improvement is going to be what they look at. But I think importantly for them, they need to be comfortable that they're also creating a benefit for their end customers. So for the end customer, we should be expecting them to have this improvement in their net operating income, which in turn, if you're an asset owner, if you capitalize that, that's going to have an improvement in your capital value of your asset.
Right. So sounds pretty good to any business owner out there, increasing the profit margins. That's yeah. If we're getting towards the end, if we zoom out a little bit and look at the whole industry, what would you like the industry to stop doing and start doing to accelerate digitalization and on a real big scale?
I think what I said earlier, stop trying to standardize the inputs. Just accept that every building is an island. It is unique, and just find the tools that allow you to use the data without having to go down, let's say, the very traditional route of trying to make everything fit in a spreadsheet or in a database where everything is labeled exactly the same way.
Right.
That's the opportunity of AI at the moment, that the reasoning engines are actually pretty good at understanding what they're seeing. And if we can help them with things like the influence graph, then we can create these kind of rapid root cause analysis. We can also find ways to standardize the output so that it doesn't matter if you go from building A to B to C, you know that you are actually going to get a similar quality of output around improving the operations, improving the efficiency of that building.
Right.
So stop standardizing the inputs, standardize the outputs.
Exactly. And now that Auttaa.ai is launched, what are the kind of next milestones? Is it number of buildings that it's being used in? Is it key partnerships? Where does the next what's the next step?
For me, I would like to have 50 buildings under management within the next 6 months. And and my goal is to try and strike agreements with 3 or 4 FM consultancies where they can take our service, they can add it to the portfolio of services that they have. We're very happy to kind of sit in the background and let them lead. They have the customer relationships.
Right.
But we have a method of helping them to improve their margins. And I hope that kind of win-win is what we can kind of move forward with. And then moving beyond that, clearly it's highly scalable. This can go anywhere. So I want to kind of see this as becoming almost like a default, that if you want to implement AI within your buildings and this autonomous intelligence layer, you come to Auttaa first.
Good. Well, thank you very much, Mark, for stopping by. Thank you for letting us pick your brain for half an hour. It seems very promising, seems very interesting. Best of luck. Congratulations on the launch.
Thank you so much.
And thank you to everyone there listening. Obviously, if you have questions for Mark or are just interested in the product, you can contact him. Your email is
mark@Auttaa.ai.
Exactly. So do send a message to him. And thank you. We'll be back next Friday with a new guest, a new topic. Until then, see you next time.
Thanks very much.